Okay, so picture this. It's late 2025, and you've got two huge stories breaking, one on each coast of the US. On the surface, you'd think they have absolutely nothing to do with each other. But if you dig a little deeper, they tell this one really powerful story about where we are right now. So, what is the link here? I mean, how on earth does a nasty political race in New York City connect to a horrific family tragedy in Hollywood? The answer? Well, it tells us something pretty deep about our public life today. All right, let's set the stage. First, you've got New York City in November 2025, completely gripped by one of the most vicious mayoral races in its history. Then, just a month later, you jump over to Los Angeles, where a truly awful crime sends shockwaves through Hollywood. Two totally different stories, right? Well, it turns out they're actually two sides of the exact same coin. So first up, let's go to New York. The 2025 race for mayor, this wasn't just your standard election. No, this became a full-on, bare-knuckle brawl that really exposed some deep, deep fractures inside the Democratic Party itself. You had these two fascinating figures going head-to-head. On one side, Zohar Mamdani, a 34-year-old Democratic socialist, a real rising star on the progressive left. And on the other, Andrew Cuomo, the 67-year-old former governor, trying to make a political comeback as an independent. This was way more than a debate over policy. It was a clash of generations, of ideologies, really a fight for the soul of New York. And this is where it all took a sharp turn. See, Mamdani's campaign was trying to focus on bread and butter issues, housing, affordability. But in the final days of the race, it just devolved. The conversation completely shifted away from policy and became intensely personal. It became all about identity. And the attacks were framed just like this. Andrew Cuomo zeroed in on Mamdani's support for Palestinian rights. He took the Arabic word intifada, which literally means uprising, and explicitly tied it to the phrase, kill the Jews. Just like that, he turned a complex geopolitical stance into a direct, incredibly loaded accusation of anti-Semitism. And Mamdani's response was just as powerful. He didn't just deny the accusations. He completely reframed the attack as part of a much bigger pattern of Islamophobia. He argued that his own faith and his background were being used as a weapon against him, calling it naked bigotry and racism, something he said was sadly familiar to many Muslim New Yorkers. So in the end, this was so much more than an election. It was a battle that laid bare this huge rift in the Democratic Party. Mamdani did win, and that victory signaled a pretty big shift. But the way the fight went down, it left some deep scars. It showed just how easily and how uncomfortably the political can become intensely personal. Okay, now let's just completely switch gears. We're heading 3,000 miles away to a totally different story. We're leaving the political mudslinging of New York and heading to the glitz of Hollywood, which was about to be shaken by something truly unimaginable. To really get the shock of this story, you have to understand who Rob Reiner was. I mean, yeah, of course. He directed some of the most classic, beloved movies ever made. But he was also an absolute giant in California politics, a huge Democratic fundraiser, a passionate advocate for marriage equality who helped take down Prop 8, and the guy who drove the creation of the state's landmark early childhood program. He wasn't just a famous director, he was a serious political player. And then the absolute unthinkable happened. On December 14th, Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle were found murdered in their own home. The news was just staggering, not just because of who they were, but because of the sheer violence of it. The timeline that started to come out was just chilling. The night before, the Reiners were at a party. Witnesses said they saw Rob get into a very loud argument with his son, Nick. Then, the next afternoon, their daughter, Romy, finds their bodies. And just a few hours after that, police arrest their son, Nick. The official reports just confirmed the brutal reality of what happened. The medical examiner said the cause of death for both Rob and Michelle was multiple sharp force injuries. And their son, Nick, was immediately charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, with a special circumstance of multiple murders. And this is the moment where our two stories, the one in New York and the one in LA, violently collide. While Hollywood and the entire country were trying to process this incredibly personal family tragedy, it was about to be dragged into the political arena in the ugliest way you can imagine. So you have this moment of national mourning, of private grief for a family, and it was just shattered. A statement coming from the very top of the political world turned this heartbreaking event into another battle in America's ongoing culture war. The statement came directly from President Donald Trump. Instead of offering condolences, he went on social media and claimed Reiner's death was linked to, and I'm quoting here, a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome. He took a brutal double murder and in an instant turned it into a weapon to attack a political opponent. The reaction was immediate, it was overwhelming, and, this is the key part, it was bipartisan. You had Democrats like Gavin Newsom calling him a sick man, but you also had Republicans. Marjorie Taylor Greene said it plainly. This is a family tragedy, not about politics. Thomas Massie called it inappropriate and disrespectful. For a brief moment, it felt like everyone agreed that a line had well and truly been crossed. And that brings us back to the connection. See, in the New York election, the political became personal. A candidate's faith was used as a political weapon. In the Hollywood tragedy, the personal became political. A family's immense grief was used as a political weapon. They are two sides of the very same coin, showing how those boundaries are just disappearing from all directions. So all of this really leads us to one central question, doesn't it? In an age where everything is so polarized, so intense, are there any lines left? Is anything still sacred? What we've seen here, from a political race in New York to a crime scene in Los Angeles, is a really troubling trend. That firewall, the one that used to separate our political fights from our private lives, our faith, our families, our personal tragedies, that wall is just crumbling. And so that leaves us with this one last lingering question. If a candidate's religion is fair game in a campaign, and if a family's horrific murder can be turned into a political jab in a heartbeat, what's next? When everything is political, is anything truly off limits anymore?